moral truth in an amoral age. Some of these topics are unpleasant and even painful to study, but we're doing our best to speak the truth in love, and today we address the threat of pornography making sex an idol. We begin in Ephesians 5 in verses 3 through 5. We can make an idol out of sexual desire when we become obsessed with it. And it is not something new. We read of this in Ephesians 5 verse 3, but fornication, sex outside of marriage, and all uncleanness, conduct leading to fornication, or covetousness, an insatiable desire for sex, let it not be once named among you as becometh saints, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting. And so our speech can be seductive, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. For this you know, that no whoremonger, that just means a fornicator, nor unclean person, nor covetous man, who is an idolater, hath any inheritance in the kingdom of God and of Christ. When we become obsessed with sex, sex becomes an idol. And that's the point made there in verse 5. It becomes a false god. Pornography depicts erotic or lewd sexual scenes in writing or in pictures. We're going to study pornography today because it is a threat to our morals and to our homes, and even it's a threat to our nations. I want to study with you God's purpose for sex, what it can and cannot do. And then next, pornography and sex have been false gods throughout history, and we'll just touch on some historical points in that. But then in the second lesson, I want to talk about walking in love in a sex-saturated society. And I want to talk about overcoming the sin and devastation of pornography. And then, lest Satan get an advantage, we want to learn to forgive the sinner. So let's think now about God's purpose for our sexual nature, what it can do and what it cannot do. God created us so that we can be His companions. What a blessing that is. We can live and die in fellowship with God and spend eternity in fellowship with God, because Genesis 1:27 teaches that God created us in His image. We have a soul, we have a spirit in the image of God. Male and female created He them. We have a fleshly body. The soul inhabits that body. And it is that fleshly body that has the gender characteristics. So living in the image of God, we're able to know Him and love Him. We are unique in that way. Now let's focus on our sexual nature for a moment and why God gave us that nature. He gave it as a gift for marital love. And this is something that goes beyond the animal level of reproduction, because it involves a commitment we make to each other. No animal has any acquaintance with such a thing. And of course, it involves an intimate, lifelong companionship or fellowship. We share our lives together. Think about how the Godhead includes the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, who live and function in perfect unity. There's no friction or conflict. Then think about how God designed marriage to be the same kind of relationship. Genesis 2:24, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and notice the next part, and they shall be one flesh. Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit dwell as one God. And in marriage we dwell, male and female, as one flesh. We function as one person in unity. Husband and wife serve each other as if they are one person, and sexual intimacy is just a part of that life of fellowship. But the sexual intimacy is a symbol, think about this now, it's a symbol of the lifelong commitment that we make. We can remember in our marriage vows that we pledge ourselves to each other for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness or in health, in adversity as in prosperity, and forsaking all others to love and to cherish till death do us part. The sexual union echoes those vows. It's the picture of that uniting of two lives as if functioning as one person. So our sexual nature makes that companionship of marriage possible. Now there's something else that it can do. Our sexual nature can bring offspring into this world in the context of a loving family. And this is exactly what God planned and purposed. In Psalm 127, verse 3, "Lo, children are an heritage, a special gift of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward." Think how children are an expression of God's love in our lives, but they're also an expression of our love. They're born from the love that we share. God is giving us offspring in the context of a loving family. God designed that children should be conceived and then raised in an environment of unselfish, nourishing love. God did not design that children were to be born from uncommitted, selfish lust. And there are many children that enter the world today in that kind of environment. And they're crippled for life. They're scarred and wounded for life. God never intended such a thing. Now then, something else that God's purpose for sex can accomplish, it provides the opportunity that we can reflect reverential fear of God. In Hebrews 13:4, we learn that as stewards of our sexual nature, we are to honor marriage, and in honoring marriage, honor God. Marriage is honorable in all, and the bed, the sexual union, undefiled. So it's clean and it's sacred. But whoremongers, fornicators, and adulterers, God will judge. Last night we talked about being stewards of our time. We are also stewards of our sexual nature. And so we'll answer to God for how we've used it. We honor marriage, we honor God. We're showing reverence for God. In Proverbs 5:18-19, the Bible pictures this in a very beautiful way. We've all been hot and tired and gone to a refreshing fountain to drink. God is the origin of sensual love, just as He is the origin of a refreshing fountain. Proverbs 5:18, "Let thy fountain be blessed." Now what fountain? "And rejoice with the wife of thy youth. Let her be as the loving hind in the pleasant roe, like a beautiful young deer. Let her breast satisfy thee at all times, and be thou ravished always with her love." So go to your wife and go to your husband and drink the refreshing fountain. And that's a gift of God. And so we're showing reverence for God as we share this gift. That's something our sexual nature accomplishes. Now Satan always offers enhancement to the blessings of God. Think about how he did that in the garden. They were in a perfect garden, and Satan said, "But you haven't tasted the best fruit. I can enhance your lives," but it was a lie. Satan does that same thing in regard to our sexual nature. By stepping outside of God's boundary, he's offering us enhanced the sexual fulfillment, and it's a lie. Proverbs 5 tells the real story in verses 22-23. The evil deeds of the wicked ensnare them. They're caught in a trap. The cords of their sins hold them fast. For lack of discipline, they will die, led astray by their own great folly. I'm using the NIV translation here. So Satan says, I can enhance your sexual experience, and all he does is put us in a death trap. He's a liar. Fornication honors Satan rather than God. So I want to go to the other side of the coin with that as a stepping stone. I want to talk about something that sex cannot do. It cannot bring fulfillment and satisfaction into our lives apart from God. Only God's design can bring about true fulfillment of our sexual nature. It's sort of like God gave you a nature to have a stomach and to enjoy good food. If you eat sand and rocks, you're not going to be very healthy and you're not going to feel very good. You're just not going to find the fulfillment. So think about it this way. God designed our sexual nature so that proper function of our sexual nature will promote physical health. It does that. It will promote emotional well-being, fulfillment, satisfaction, and even psychological happiness. Everything God does brings a blessing, right? So now look at the other side. Satan's substitute is soulless sex. And here's the key difference. In God's design for our sexual nature, we're serving each other. Learning to serve others always brings a blessing. But when we step outside of God's boundary with our sexual nature, think about what we're doing. We're abusing our own sexual nature, and we abuse the person we're with. We abuse the person we're with. We are using that person for our own selfish lust. We're not serving that person. We're manipulating that person, taking unfair advantage of that person, cursing that person, scarring that person for time and eternity. We're helping that person go to hell. That cannot bring happiness and fulfillment and satisfaction. It will bring shame and guilt, frustration, disappointment. It will bring sad memories in the end. Satan is a liar. We cannot find satisfaction of our sexual nature apart from God. God designed sexual intimacy so that the husband and the wife are serving each other. I want that to sink into our minds. Serving each other in unity. Father, the Son, and the Spirit work in that perfect unity. Husband and wife are united as one flesh, not only in the sexual experience, but in everything they do. They are learning to function as one person. That's God's design. It's interesting that neuroscience, the study of the brain, confirms what we have learned from the Bible in this matter. The brain is trained by sexual arousal to find fulfillment in the mate. I grew up eating mangoes and pineapples. I grew up in South Florida. By going to the Philippines, my brain has been trained to find out there are more delicious mangoes and pineapples in the Philippines. So your brain learns things and it gets attracted and focused. And so neuroscience has actually proven that's how it works when you marry and you're faithful to your mate. You keep going to the same mango. You keep going to the same pineapple. But also neuroscience, by studying the brain, they have learned that pornography retrains the brain. It retrains the brain by producing sexual arousal in the pornographic pictures. We're looking for fulfillment with a dehumanized image. you're looking at a picture. You're not having a relationship with a real person, but it funnels your brain away from your wife or your husband, and it funnels your brain to this dehumanized image. And so you can't find sexual fulfillment in that way. It's a curse. It's a curse. Satan enslaves us with cold, crude, cruel counterfeits for sensual love. Pornography doesn't bring any sense of real fulfillment. It just creates a burning desire that cannot be fulfilled. Voyeurism, people that roam in the neighborhood trying to look through the window at night and see a woman changing her clothes. Think about this. Those people don't find any fulfillment. It's just a burning lust that gets worse and worse. Fornication is the same way. Did you know people do not really find sexual fulfillment in fornication? They use each other and they move on. And they don't find any satisfaction. Adultery does not bring about fulfillment, happiness, and satisfaction. Polygamy does not. Rape does not. Incest, having sex with our own children, does not. Pedophilia, people that roam the neighborhood to find little children to have sex with them. Of course, what these people are doing is gross. But I want you to realize what they're doing does not bring satisfaction in their life. All it does is keep stirring a fire of desire which really cannot be fulfilled. It's ridiculous and horrible to think about it, but necrophilia, there are people who break into funeral homes and try to have sex with dead bodies. Do you think there's any happiness or fulfillment? There can't be. Homosexuality does not bring fulfillment. The so-called sex change does not bring happiness and fulfillment. So I'm trying to give you time to think about these and how different that is to the sexual fulfillment God gave in marriage. It's completely different. One is a counterfeit and the other is the real thing. Did you know that pornography can become an addiction, just like illegal drugs? Here's somebody that takes illegal drugs, and with this substance abuse, they get this high, this euphoria. And then, of course, they have to come back down. And when they come back down, they experience dissatisfaction, an empty feeling. And they experience guilt and shame. And the next part of the cycle, there's a moral resolve. I shouldn't do that again. I don't need to be doing that. This is how the mind moves. This is how it moves. Now later, there's such a memory of that euphoria that it becomes like a pain that needs something to mollify it, and so they eventually go back to take the drugs again. But they can never really get that same high again. And when they come back down, they're dissatisfied and they resolve again they'll not do this anymore. And then the pain comes back and they're just caught in a cycle. Did you know pornography does that? Pornography does this same thing. It becomes an addiction. We become slaves to the pornography. I want to talk to you about pornography and sex as false gods down through time and history. This is not a new issue or problem. Satan has always been a master of deception. Satan projects evil as good, and we know that from the very beginning of time. Remember in Genesis 3:5, when Adam and Eve lived in that perfect garden? Satan marketed sin as the highest blessing. You're missing the best fruit. And he said, when you eat that fruit, Genesis 3 verse 5, your eyes will be opened, a new wonderful mountaintop experience. Ye shall be as gods. You yourselves can set the standard of good and evil. Well, of course, It was great advertising, but a lie. Now, Satan has been using this abuse of our sexual nature to do his damning work in people's lives for centuries upon centuries. Pornography is an ancient ad for fornication. We can trace this back through history. In fact, the word is ancient. Pornographos is a Greek word. Graphos, anything written. Porn from the Greek language, prostitutes. Pornography, writing about prostitutes. That's how old this is. Think about pornography and fornication throughout history in this way. Religious pornography, yes, I said religious pornography, and prostitution were common in the ancient nations. Study the history of Babylon and Canaan, the Canaanites, India, Greece, Rome, all of these ancient cultures used pornography as part of their religious practice. If you've ever seen a picture of the goddess Diana or Aphrodite, they are sex symbols. It's a female body covered with breasts. And to honor the goddess, they went to the temple where temple prostitutes served the sexual needs of the worshiper. So they're using pornography. Their god is just a pornographic image, and it leads them to fornication. See the tie between pornography and fornication. Satan has been doing this for centuries. Coming more toward modern history, in the 15th century, the printing press was invented. And it was a wonderful invention. But of course, it was used also for pornography. In the 19th century, the camera was invented. Another blessing. But pornographic pictures then came into play and spread this sin further. 1953, an American named Hugh Hefner started the Playboy magazine, which was nothing but a pornographic magazine that became worldwide. So you see how Satan all through history just keeps working this false god of sex. 1957, it is shameful that our own Supreme Court legalized most pornography as free speech. Free speech. Poison, but it's legalized. And then, of course, the 20th and 21st centuries now, we have the internet and electronic media, which, as we discussed last night, can be used properly. But pornographers have been using this big time. Big time. It's just easy to pick up a cell phone now and access pornography in an instant. And as we discussed, even many young people have been drawn in innocently using a laptop or a computer, and they're looking for things that pertain to homework and school assignments, and the pornographers have worked it so it brings them to a porn site, and many young people become hooked in that way. So just think back through history what Satan has been doing. He's a liar and a cheat. Did you know even women are being drawn in? Women are bowing to the idol of sex. And actually that even goes back to the beginning of time in Genesis 3 verse 7 when Adam and Eve sinned. They made aprons. Remember that? They made aprons. An apron covered their waist and their private part, maybe about halfway on the thigh. And this was pornographic clothing. And God covered them. Excuse me, verse 21, God made coats or tunics. That's a garment covering from the shoulders to the knees. Isn't that interesting? From the beginning of time, God said no to pornography. Here's a woman presenting herself in a pornographic way by her clothing. And God says no. No, your body needs to be covered properly. So jumping ahead to the Romans. The Romans imported silk from China, and made flimsy gauze-like material that women wore as dresses. And even pagan philosophers protested, these clothes are made of glass. They render the women naked, they protested. This is shameful that not only men are guilty of this, women become guilty of this. Does anybody here remember the name Mary Quaint? Maybe not, unless you're my age. Mary Quaint in 1965 designed the miniskirt. When I was growing up, there was no miniskirt. People would have been terribly ashamed to see a woman dressed like that. But here's what most people don't know. This was an evil woman serving Satan. I quote from her, "Good pornography is erotic." And she wanted to design clothes like that. She said, "I love vulgarity." She intentionally designed clothes that would call the attention of men to a female hip or breast or the crotch. In plain language, she was promoting pornography through the clothing design. Here's an interesting quotation from a denominational writer, but he told the truth. 50 years ago, an American girl would have been ashamed to be seen in public with too little on. Now she's embarrassed to be seen with too much on, even if she's in church. You may be aware of this, but there are men in churches of Christ that have had men's meetings to discuss what to do and how to do in serving the Lord's Supper, because when they go down the aisle and try to be careful so they don't drop the plate and they're trying to pass it to women, and the women are sitting there in these short skirts, and because they're sitting down, their thigh is exposed. And these men are trying to worship, and they don't need to see that. Women are involved in promoting pornography through their dress. Women have participated in sex chat rooms. Women have participated in sexting pornographic messages and videos. I preach in a congregation that has had elders going back about 40 years, and they have maintained very strong Bible preaching in that congregation. But since I have lived there, one of the members, a lady married to a brother, through this sexting and sex chat rooms, got in touch with a man in Germany, and she left her husband, left her children, and left her Lord, and went to Germany. This is happening among our brethren. Satan is using women. Well, I want to speak for just a few minutes about the question, is pornography harmless or harmful? AARP magazine for seniors, somebody wrote in and said, "Help, my husband loves porn, can you help me?" And the article that was written said, "Don't worry, pornography does not undermine relationships, immortal souls, or our republic." Pornography is harmless, that's what they're saying. This is a lie of Satan, just like he lied in the garden. I want to think about the effect of pornography on marriage. It is a violation of the vow we made before God to love our mate only. We all made that vow. Pornography means I'm shifting my love from my wife to these evil images and pictures. Furthermore, it dehumanizes the woman both in the images and even the wife. Because now, rather than living in harmony to serve each other, we're treating the woman in the picture and our wife as disposable sex toys. They just become toys. You play with this toy, you play with the other toy. You come back, play with this toy, you play with the other toy. So what is a woman? She's just a toy. What's the effect on marriage? Well, it undermines the wife's sense of companionship and self-worth in the marriage. How can she ever be equal to the images of pornography. Well, she really can't. And even some of those images are polished in a way that nobody can. So here's the man chasing a phantom and leaving the reality of his wife to do it. It undermines the wife's sense of security and trust. Marriage requires a sense of security and trust. So the wife begins to wonder, who is this man I married? What in the world does he want? Why is he feeding his mind on these ugly, sinful pictures? And if the husband happened to see it come up on the laptop, the wife, if the wife approached and said, what was that? Then he lies. I don't know how that came up. Well, I didn't open that site. He lies to her. And he hides it. And she's not dumb. Soon she knows I'm married to a man who lies to my face. I wonder what the effect on marriage is. Harmful or harmless? What do you think? What do you think? How about the effect on the male? We've already discussed it will reprogram his mind to lose interest in his wife because now he's attracted to these images. Not helpful. Then, I'm not exaggerating, stay with me. If he keeps feeding this perverted desire, it can lead him to commit rape. It can lead to child molestation. It can lead to incest. What else? It can lead to murder. Does anybody in this room remember the name Ted Bundy? Executed in Florida. At least 30 confirmed cases where he raped a woman and then killed her. Before they executed him, he accepted an interview. I'm going to quote Ted Bundy. He's talking about how he was drawn into pornography that led him to commit these murders. You look for more potent, more explicit, more graphic kinds of material until reaching that jumping off point. What does he mean? You keep feeding and feeding on this stuff, and finally you want to act. You want to do something. So you rape somebody. And then you're afraid that person will report you to the police, so you kill that person. Did you know pornography led this man down that road? Harmful or harmless? What do you think? How about the effect on children? Harmful or harmless? Well, I'll let Ted Bundy answer that. Pornography can reach in and snatch a kid out of any house today. You know one reason he said that? He was not raised in a home where his father was accessing pornography. He was raised in a home where they went to church. But pornography can reach in and snatch a kid out of any house. Harmful or harmless? And this is why last night we talked about parents needing to guard and guide their children in the use of social media. We need to monitor our children. We need to require they use media in open spaces and open doors. Trust but verify for their own protection. We need to be very selective as to what our children are watching, and we can even download filtering devices to help with this. We should enforce family rules with discipline so that our children will not be pulled into pornography. And also we can build character in our children by having daily Bible reading and prayer with them. By building character, we steer them away from such temptations as pornography. Remember Ephesians 6:4? It talks about a father raising children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, and the father should avoid conduct that will anger the children. And likewise, Colossians 3:21, he should not treat his children in a way that will discourage them. I want to make an application regarding pornography. Did you know a father's perversion using pornography can lead him to molest his own children? And this will provoke anger in his own children. It will provoke rebellion in his own children. It will leave lifelong wounds in his children. And listen to me, it can turn his children into infidels. Why, how do you know that? I know that because I've lived it. I know that because I have lived it. My father had pornographic magazines in the house. The result of this, with other abusive conduct, verbal abuse, physical abuse, and sexual abuse. Yes, I'm a victim of sexual abuse by my own father. Provoked anger as we were growing up as children, rebellion, it leaves lifelong wounds. My youngest sister was dead at age 21 with alcohol in her body. My next sister has been a lifelong faithful Christian, but she's had 4 nervous breakdowns. Lifelong wounds. Listen to me, please. My brother is 10 times smarter than I am. He has 3 PhD degrees. He is a constitutional lawyer who wins his cases at the Supreme Court level. That's my brother, who is an infidel because of my father's conduct. Harmful or harmless? And the answer is crystal clear. What is the effect on a wife and a mother of pornography in the home? She will experience a deep sense of revulsion, horror. She will suffer deep pain and shame living in a house where pornography is used. Her husband using pornography destroys her sense of peace and trust and security in the marriage. Harmful or harmless? Now here's an interesting twist that shows how Satan works. Here's the husband using pornography, and the wife finds out and confronts him. Let me tell you how that works. She will now become the victim of verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and physical abuse. The husband will indignantly accuse her of abusing him. Why are you spying on me? What kind of wife does that? Oh, you're puritanical. You think you're better than everybody, don't you? You're so unforgiving. I thought you were a Christian. Now that's the kind of speech the husband will make. So he makes the wife the criminal instead of the victim. This is how Satan twists people. Harmful or harmless? What do you think? She will struggle to convince her husband to repent. She will weep tears, and she will pray, and she will plead. That's the effect on the wife and the mother. She begins to realize, I have a lack of total knowledge and control of the events that are happening in my own home. She begins to wonder, are my children being exposed to this pornography? She begins to wonder, are my children being molested by my husband? She begins to wonder, are my children molested, but they're intimidated and they're afraid to tell me about it? These are the things that will go through her mind. She now has a wrenching dilemma. How can she protect herself and protect her children? And what are the proper options here? Does she have any leverage to get this situation to change? Now you might say she should talk to her family about it and get help. Talk to her friends. Go to the elders of the church. She can approach a counselor, and she might need to report it to some government official. Yes, but what she's afraid of, she will be put into greater danger if she takes that step. The husband may literally abuse her physically because she's reaching out for help. This happens many, many times. Should she leave temporarily, trying to get him to realize he's got to stop this? She's in a dilemma, and there are no good, clear answers to this dilemma. Harmful or harmless? I want you to know that no one is immune from the danger and the threat of pornography. There are elders who have been guilty of this. There are deacons, there are preachers. I was close friends to a young preacher that was one of the most talented young preachers I've ever known. I was called to go to him when he tried to commit suicide. Why in the world would the young preacher try to commit suicide? He told me, for 15 years I have been secretly accessing pornography. And this finally led me to secretly go to prostitutes. I've gone many times. And he said, prostitutes are expensive, and I'm now $60,000 in credit card debt. He lost his faith. He lost his family. I don't know where he is today. So I'm saying that to say, this is a danger and a threat to me as a preacher, to any elder in the church, to any brother or sister in the church. We are not immune. In the next period, I want to talk about walking in love, true love, in a sex-saturated society.